Hey there! If you're enjoying this deep dive into the conspiracy to assassinate Julius Caesar, please give this video a thumbs up, leave your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more fascinating historical content. The plot to assassinate Julius Caesar began a crucial meeting between three central figures: Cassius Longinus, Marcus Brutus, and Decimus Brutus. Cassius, an experienced soldier and general, had previously fought against the Parthians under Crassus about a decade earlier. Following Crassus's disastrous defeat, Cassius managed to rally the surviving forces and successfully defended Syria from a Parthian counterattack. Later, during the civil war, he commanded a Pompeian fleet and, to everyone's surprise, emerged as Rome's most successful naval commander in generation. Despite his achievements, Pompey was ultimately defeated, and Cassius was captured. Recognizing Cassius' abilities, Caesar granted him a full pardon and assigned him to lead a legion designated for Egypt. Although the Alexandrian campaign was fraught with challenges, Cassius' leadership was vital in maintaining the Roman position until reinforcements arrived. After the campaign, Cassius informed Caesar that he would not take part in the slaughter of Pompeians, prompting Caesar to send him back to Rome. This decision proved detrimental to Cassius' professionality, and as Caesar later planned to assign him to a thankless administrative role in Syria for the upcoming Parthian campaign. Marcus Brutus, on the other hand, had his early political career closely aligned with the ultra-conservative Cato. Unlike Cassius, Brutus was not a military man. During the Civil War, he joined the Pompeians, but he did not distinguish himself in any notable way. After Pompey's defeat, he quickly surrendered to Caesar, who appointed him governor of Cisalpine Gaul, and promised to advance his career with the possibility of future consulship. Throughout these events, Brutus maintained a relatively favorable personal relationship with Caesar, likely influenced by the long-standing romantic relationship between Caesar and Brutus's mother, Servilia. This relationship was not uncommon. Servilia, an older woman twice widowed with several children, was free to associate with whomever she chose. Consequently, Brutus had known Caesar for most of his adult life, if not longer, and Caesar was inclined to support his mistress's son in any way possible. Decimus Brutus, a distant cousin of Marcus Brutus, had a different background, a staunch supporter of Caesar. Decimus had served under Caesar in Gaul for at least 5 years and fought alongside him and Antony at the Battle of Alesia. He was even regarded as part of Caesar's inner circle. During the Civil War, Decimus remained in Cisalpine Gaul, where he impressed many by successfully suppressing a major uprising. This earned him Caesar's approval, leading to his election as praetor. By the end of his term, he was appointed as the formal governor of Cisalpine Gaul. These three men, Cassius, Brutus, and Decimus, came to believe that Caesar intended to dismantle the Roman Republic by crowning himself king. In their view, this was already occurring, as Caesar wielded nearly all the power of a monarch, making Roman politics increasingly irrelevant. To them, the only solution was to remove Caesar from power, by any means necessary. However, to accomplish this, their small conspiracy needed to expand. It didn't take long to recruit prominent politicians, including Gaius Trebonius, a former consul, general, and veteran of the Gallic Wars, who had become disillusioned with Caesar over his treatment of the Senate. They also gained the support of Julius Caesar, a former Caesarian and praetor who saw the conspiracy as his path to power, and Publius Servilius Casca, a childhood friend of Caesar and now a tribute of the plebs, who had become so alarmed by Caesar's authoritarianism that he joined the plot to end his life. Ultimately, around 60 senators joined the conspiracy, arguably too many, as it significantly increased the risk of discovery. 7% of the entire Senate, far too many to keep a secret. The 16 conspirators began meeting regularly to plan their next steps. Most believed that the logical course was to involve Mark Antony, Caesar's consular colleague for the year. If Antony supported the assassination, he might help them pacify Caesar's legions. The conspirators felt that they had much to offer Antony. If Antony could bridge the divide between Caesar's veterans and conspirators, he would become one of the most powerful senators in Rome. A consensus was forming, but before any concrete action could be taken, Trebonius, a former consul, spoke up. He knew Antony well, having served with him under Caesar in Gaul. Trebonius revealed that just the previous year, he had approached Antony as part of another conspiracy, and Antony had flatly refused. When Trebonius disclosed this refusal to the previous conspiracy, it had frightened the members, causing the plan to fall apart. Trebonius argued against risking exposure by involving Antony, knowing his likely response. The conspirators were persuaded. No, Antony. But what about Cicero? He was one of the few remaining former consuls who had risen to power before Caesar. Cicero was a hero, having crushed the Catiline rebellion 20 years earlier, and was an older statesman. Maybe he was the one to lead them out of this crisis. After some debate, the conspirators ultimately decided against inviting Cicero into the plot. The exact reason is unclear, but it may have been due to Cicero's attempts to influence the new regime, which led him to spend an inordinate amount of time with Caesarion. Some conspirators may have feared he had shifted alliances. Another possible reason was the strong generational divide within the conspiracy, which was composed almost entirely of men in their early 40s. Perhaps they simply did not know Cicero well, as he was in his 60s, and might have questioned his loyalty. Thus, Cicero was left out, and the conspiracy continued in its current form. One of the conspirators' early decisions was that the assassination should occur in public. It needed to be seen by the people as a legitimate act driven by idealism and conviction, no secret killing. However, beyond this general principle, there was little agreement on how to proceed. Some proposed assassinating Caesar while he was overseeing that year's election. In this scenario, Caesar would be on a raised platform in full view of the electorate, meeting the public criteria. But this plan had its difficulty. Caesar would be in exclusive VIP area, surrounded by supporters, and even if the assassination succeeded, it would almost certainly incite a riot, endangering the conspirator. Others suggested killing him on his way to elections if they could predict his route. They could set up an ambush as he crossed the bridge. Caesar would have bodyguards and a struggle would ensue. But some conspirators believed that if they acted swiftly, they could rush Caesar and push him off the bridge, where assassins would be waiting below to finish the job. This plan, though better, was highly complex and depended on the physical prowess of a group of intellectual senators. They then considered yet another plan. Decimus, who happened to run a company of gladiators as a side business, proposed using these gladiators to attack Caesar during public game, leaving the killing to professionals. So they had three plans on the table: the election plan, the bridge plan, and the gladiator plan. The conspirators went back and forth in meeting after meeting, debating the pros and cons. Then, unexpectedly, Caesar made a public announcement that had been kept as a closely guarded secret. He would be leaving Rome on March 18th. The conspirators had been operating under the assumption that they had several months to formulate a plan, but they were mistaken. They now had only a few weeks. This development changed everything. All the previous plans were discarded, and the conspirators had to start from scratch. They still agreed that the assassination needed to take place in a public setting, but upon reconsideration, they realized it also had to occur in a controlled environment, ideally away from Caesar's bodyguard and potential rioters. Additionally, the new time constraint meant they had to organize everything swiftly. The plan couldn't be overly complicated, Senate meetings occurred regularly and wouldn't require additional arrangements. Moreover, the Senate meeting was technically a public event while still being relatively isolated. Caesar's bodyguards wouldn't be allowed inside, and the symbolic impact of removing a tyrant during a Senate session made it the ideal setting. Finally, the conspirators reached a consensus. Now, they just needed to finalize the detail. Since Caesar was leaving on March 18th, they decided the attack should occur during the last Senate meeting before his departure. On March 15th, the Ides of March, coordinating this wasn't as simple as it seemed. Caesar was personally funding a complete redesign of Rome's downtown area, including the old Senate house. Consequently, the Senate had been meeting in various temples around the city. The conspirators agreed that the safest approach would be to slash weapons at the location. But with all the moving around, they couldn't be certain where the Senate would meet on that day. So instead, they decided that a select group of senators would hide daggers in their togas. This was risky, as carrying a dagger within the pomerium was punishable by death, but it was necessary. For the others, they decided to smuggle weapons into the Senate meeting using baskets that were typically filled with note-taking material. If the meeting location was changed at the last minute, these baskets would hopefully be moved along. Caesar and Antony were co-consuls that year, and if the assassination occurred during the meeting, only Antony's permission could be granted to enter the building. All the conspirators had to do was keep Caesar distracted long enough for the assassins to rush him, overwhelming him before he could resist. One of the conspirators would need to distract Antony. In an effort to elevate suspicion, Decimus Brutus and Cassius argued that it would be wise for Antony to not attend the meeting that day. They devised a scheme to convince Antony to stay away. This plan led to a confrontation with Cassius, who in an uncharacteristic moment lashed out at Antony, insisting that his long-standing opposition to Caesar wasn't personal and that he had no hard feelings towards him. This moment likely confused Antony, who would have wondered if Cassius was acting on behalf of Caesar. However, Antony ultimately agreed to skip the meeting. Now all the pieces were in place for the assassination. The day of assassination, March 15, began as a typical day. Caesar arrived at the Senate meeting in a jovial mood, unaware that his death was imminent. As he walked through the streets of Rome, the conspirators had made preparations to usher him into the Senate building. One of the key figures, Casca, played a crucial role in the assassination. He was to be the first conspirators to stab Caesar, aiming for his neck and hoping to strike quickly. In the moments leading up to the assassination, several omens emerged, including prophetic warning from a soothsayer who called out, "Beware the ideas of March." However, Caesar dismissed this warning, and the meeting proceeded as planned. As Caesar entered the Senate, a sense of unease lingered in the air. The conspirators gathered around him, attempting to appear casual. Decimus Brutus initiated a discussion about the potential for political change in Rome. Seizing the moment, Casca lunged at Caesar and struck him in the neck. A shocked Caesar tended to confront his attacker, and as he did, he felt a sudden sharp pain, realizing he had been betrayed by those he trusted the most. In the chaos that followed, other conspirators joined in, each delivering their blows. What had been intended as a swift and controlled assassination devolved into a frantic and chaotic scene. As Caesar fell to the ground, he uttered his final words, "Et tu, Brutus? And you, Brutus?" These words echoed throughout the Senate hall, marking the end of his life and the beginning of a new era in Roman history. The aftermath of Caesar's assassination was immediate and tumultuous. The conspirators, initially emboldened by their success, soon found themselves facing unexpected backlash. The public, initially supportive of the idea of liberating Rome from tyranny, quickly turned against them as news of assassination spread. Caesar's supporters, led by Mark Antony and Octavian, later known as Augustus, rallied to avenge their fallen leader. But the conspirators had envisioned as a restoration of the Republic, instead plunged Rome into a new cycle of civil war. The power vacuum left by Caesar's death ignited fierce rivalry, leading to the eventual rise of the very monarchy the conspirators sought to prevent. Ultimately, the assassination of Julius Caesar marked a turning point in Roman history, leading to the end of the Roman Republic and the rise of Roman Empire. The consequences of that fateful day continue to resonate throughout history, serving as a poignant reminder of the complexities of power, loyalty, and often unpredictable nature of political ambition. That morning, Julius Caesar was set to attend a minor religious ceremony, fulfilling his role as Rome's chief priest. Conveniently, the event was located just steps from his front door, making it easy for him to get there. As he participated in the ceremony, Caesar spotted a soothsayer named Esporina across the crowd. In a playful tone, he called out, "The ideas of March have arrived." Esporina replied cryptically, "Yes, the ideas have arrived, but they are not yet over." Upon returning home, Caesar confided in his wife, Calpurnia, that he was still feeling unwell. After some discussion, they decided that, with Caesar's campaign starting in just a few days, he should take this opportunity to rest and recover. Given that the Senate was scheduled to meet that day, Caesar sent word to Mark Antony, asking him to cancel the meeting due to his illness. Little did they know, this decision nearly put the entire conspiracy at risk. In an urgent rush, Decimus Brutus arrived at Caesar's home and inquired about the cancelled Senate meeting. Caesar explained Calpurnia's troubled dream and how neither of them had slept well that night. Decimus laughed dismissively, brushing off the dream as mere superstition. He then played on Caesar's insecurity, suggesting that if it became known he was canceling a Senate meeting based on his wife's ominous dreams, many senators would see it as a personal insult. With a dramatic pause, Decimus added, "I'm not supposed to tell you this," before revealing that certain senators were secretly working on a bill to grant Caesar the title of king, but only outside of Italy. He further claimed that this bill lacked universal support, warning that if Caesar insulted the Senate now, it might never pass. This was a blatant lie. The bill didn't exist. However, the flattery appealed to Caesar's vanity, and the deception worked. Caesar agreed to attend the Senate meeting, and Decimus, quick thinking, had just saved the conspiracy. As they made their way to the meeting, a man named Artemidorus pushed through the crowd and grabbed Caesar, thrusting a scroll into his hand. "Caesar, read this quickly and alone. It concerns you personally." Artemidorus insisted. Used to such encounters, Caesar handed the scroll off to one of his attendants, dismissing it. Later, an investigation revealed that the scroll contained detailed warning about the conspiracy, but Caesar never took the time to read it. As noted before, the Senate couldn't meet in their usual house and had been convening in various temporary locations around the city. By sheer coincidence, the day's meeting was set to occur in the Grand Theater of Pompeii, just outside Rome's sacred boundary known as the Pomerium. The theater, a magnificent complex built by Pompey during his rise to power, included a theater, an arena, a temple, and numerous other amenities. That day, the Senate was to meet in the temple, with a gladiator event scheduled to take place in the arena later. Wait a minute, gladiators? Decimus owned gladiators, and upon discovering the meeting's location, he attempted to enlist them for the games next door. For reasons unknown, his request was declined. Instead, the plan was for them to linger outside the arena, armed and conspicuously present, as if they belonged there. This was hardly subtle. If anyone questioned their presence, they had a cover story ready about waiting for another gladiator to appear so they could arrest him for breaking his contract. Meanwhile, Caesar and Decimus were running late for the Senate meeting, leaving most of the senators milling about outside the temple, chatting idly. But Cassius wasn't among them. He was inside the temple, standing in silence and gazing up at the grand statue of Pompey. After Pompey's death, Cassius had remained loyal to his memory, refusing to fight against his fellow Pompeian. The noise outside indicated that Caesar was approaching, pulling Cassius from his thoughts. He stepped outside to greet Caesar. Looking around, Cassius noticed many of his fellow conspirators among the crowd but couldn't find Decimus anywhere. He approached Decimus and Casca, another conspirator, to ensure everything was in place. A group of senators were clamoring for a private word with Caesar, delaying their entrance. While Cassius, Decimus, and Casca were waiting, a senator named Linus approached them and rather too loudly said, "Casca, Brutus told me your little secret. How dare you keep me in the dark like this?" Casca panicked, unsure how to respond, but Linus continued, "I hear you're running for Adia. When did this happen?" As Linus made a scene, another senator, someone outside the conspiracy, pulled Cassius and Decimus aside. In hushed tones, he said, "I hope you accomplish your task. Please don't delay. People are talking and they know." Cassius and Decimus exchanged startled glances, taking a moment to assess Caesar, who seemed unaware of the brewing tension. Just then, the loud-mouthed Linus moved over to Caesar, pulling him aside and making a show of whispering something in his ear. Cassius, Decimus, and Casca held their breath. Should they act now? Should Decimus call for his gladiators? But it was nothing significant. Linus walked away, and everyone began moving aside. As planned, the conspirators, Trebonius, pulled Mark Antony aside for a private conversation. Caesar cleared the temple and took his seat in a special golden chair, more reminiscent of a throne than a simple seat. Since this was a Senate meeting, his bodyguards stayed outside. Normally, Antony would have been sitting just a few steps away, but for the moment, he was still outside with Trebonius. Attendance at this particular Senate meeting was poor. Out of around 900 potential attendees, only 200 to 300 showed up. Among them, around 60 were conspirators, 20 to 30%, a significant number. It was no wonder people were talking. A signal was given, and a group of conspirators rose and moved towards Caesar. Julius Caesar boldly requested Caesar to consider pardoning his brother, an ex-Pompeian who had fled after the civil war. As Caesar made his plea, the rest of the conspirators slowly spread out, forming a perimeter around Caesar. Seated, Caesar replied that Caesar's brother had shown no remorse and therefore would not be pardoned. As he finished speaking, Casca was standing directly behind him. Suddenly, Caesar seized Caesar's toga, yanking it hard and exposing his bare shoulder. This was the prearranged signal to attack. Casca immediately drew his dagger and struck, but missed his mark, merely grazing Caesar's shoulder and drawing a small trickle of blood. Caesar, startled, struggled with Casca and shouted, "Casca, what are you doing?" In some accounts, he is said to have exclaimed, "This is violence." It was notable that Caesar and Casca had known each other since childhood. Both conspirators and onlookers were stunned, momentarily paralyzed by the sudden turn of events. For several agonizing moments, Caesar and Casca were locked in a tense struggle. Finally, Casca cried out in Greek, "Brother, help me!" His brother, Tedius, rushed forward, breaking the stunned silence. Chaos erupted in the room. Caesar managed to stand and break free from Casca's grasp. The first person he saw was Cassius, who drew his blade and slashed at Caesar's face. Caesar struggled back, only to confront Tedius, who stabbed him between the ribs. Two bystanders rushed forward to assist Caesar, but the conspirators, forming a barrier around him, held them back. The remaining conspirators pressed in, attacking ferociously. Decimus inflicted a severe wound to Caesar's thigh. In the chaos, Cassius, attempting a second strike, accidentally stabbed Brutus in the hand. Eventually, the injury to Caesar's leg overwhelmed him, and he collapsed to the ground. Brutus, with his hand still dripping with blood, leaned over the fallen dictator. Caesar spoke in Greek. "You too, my child?" Brutus then plunged his dagger into Caesar's groin, These would be Caesar's final words. In a last act of dignity, he covered his face with his toga and succumbed to death, his body falling directly beneath the statue of Pompey. With the deed done, many conspirators, emboldened by the adrenaline, found their resolve and took turns stabbing Caesar's corpse, symbolizing their participation in the assassination. Despite this frenzy after death, Caesar bore only 23 wounds, indicating that most conspirators merely watched. Ancient accounts suggest that 5 of Caesar's wounds can be reliably identified. The first from Casca to the shoulder, the second from Cassius to the face, the third from Tedius between the ribs, the fourth from Decimus to the thigh, and the fifth from Brutus to the groin. Likely, these 5 men were the only ones to strike Caesar while he was still alive. The remaining 18 stabbing occurred after he had died. When the critical moment arrived, as many as 19% of the conspirators did nothing. Later examination of Caesar's body revealed that one of the 23 wounds, 23 were superficial, and the only one was fatal. That fatal wound, delivered between the ribs by Tedius, sealed Caesar's fate, and the entire assassination unfolded in less than a minute. Many senators hadn't even had time to leave their seats. A heavy silence settled over the room. Marcus Brutus, his hands smeared with both Caesar's blood and his own, was the first to move. He approached the seated senators, singled one out, and shouted, "You're a murderer. You're a murderer." Thank you for joining us on this exploration of Julius Caesar's assassination. Don't forget to leave a like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon for more fascinating historical content. See you next time.